Gwyn Road.
Where are we today, Phil?
Gwyn Road, between Mount Gould Road and Ladysmith Road. Now, in my opinion, this is the site of the battle of what is known today as Freedom Fields, the Sabbath day.
Site.
Very close to this area would be where the fighting took place. Looking down Mount Gould Road towards the Plym River, Lara Point work was down that end.
On the left, isn't it?
On the far end, yeah, on the left. That was overrun. That was the fort that was overrun. In the morning, the Royalists came up the sloping ground further down from here to reinforce what they'd captured the night before. The night was very sort of a period of indecision for the Royalists. They seemed to, although they overran the Lara Point work, and one of the Parliamentarian guards fired off a warning shot, the Royalists delayed. They stayed there. For some reason, these Royalists just waited. In the morning, the Parliamentarians counter-attacked that fort, failed to take it, and withdrew up this area, known as Five Fields, towards Lipsome Fort, which is at the far end, on the right, far end of Mount Gould Road, where Colonel Gould was gathering his army of 1,000+ men to defend Lipsome Fort. The next objective for the Royalists would have been Lipsome Fort. They were hoping to roll up that work, go on to Holywell, Magdalen, and take out all the lines.
Right.
But there weren't enough Royalist soldiers in the attack to do that against a determined foe. They marched up here after getting reinforcements from the Lara Point work. They marched up here and delayed again. Somewhere in this area, they formed up and waited. When they were ready to attack, it was too late. Colonel William Gould has gathered his men together and counter-attacked them. So they met in the middle. Both sides moved forward, met in the middle, hand-to-hand fighting. In the meantime, a roundhead force was moving around their flank, 60 musketeers. The battle, as I've talked about, was won by the Parliamentarians. The Royalists fled down towards the river, Lipson Creek. But what we're going to talk about today is what it was like here after the battle, the day after, on a Monday morning,
like
with
today,
a mist,
like
with a bit
today.
cold. Some of the wounded have been already moved back towards the Lipsome Fort, taken away. The lightly wounded would have been down. In this area, we would have had dead bodies. With the cold, they were like grotesque statues just laying in the mud, waiting to be found. Although some had been taken away the day before, a lot of them were still waiting to be found, because they were this area, although it was fields, there was trees and bushes and hedges. So men went out looking for the dead and wounded, because they were still finding wounded men who were not found the night before. There were a few horses as well that had been, some of them just blown apart, just left here with their legs sticking up in the air. If this was the summer, the bodies would have bloated by now. But being winter, it was cold, so none of the usual decay had set in very much. So these bodies were easy to be buried, and they were buried in pits. They were stripped of their clothing, anything useful, and buried in where they fell, really. They dug a pit, bring these men over, bury them in here.
So those people are still here?
Yeah, nobody knows where they were.
Under some of these houses?
Yeah.
In this area?
There could be about 20 to 30 dead bodies.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yes, because if you read in the American Civil War, they were still finding bodies around Gettysburg years later. Skeletons turned up, and about 30 years ago, I think they found another skeleton of a dead soldier from the American Civil War who laid in the bushes,
And we
in the
still
woods.
find that today from World War I and World War
You see,
II.
But in the English Civil War, being a small battlefield, they wouldn't have all been discovered on the first day. So they were still finding bodies. It was a solemn day. I mean, Mayor Coles said the Lord delivered us from... Okay, sorry. The mayor was very grateful for what happened here. He said the Lord delivered us on this day. It was a great celebration for Plymouth. Like I said, women brought up strong waters to feed their troops. It was a very somber atmosphere after a battle. There's no noise. People were walking around looking for their relatives. The women from Plymouth, some of them lost a husband. Like I said, William Bloy who was killed during the fighting. Left his wife and 3 kids, so she probably tried to find his body but couldn't find it.
What else would be left on the battlefield?
Very little. Anything of use would be taken, scavenged. Men were buried in their underclothes normally, their undershirt, their pants. That's it. Everything else that was useful was taken off. It depends. I mean, that's on the bigger battlefields. Here it could have been they were just put in pits with their clothes on. Anything, belts, armour, weapons would be taken. Money, they would go through their pockets. Because people weren't very rich in those days. There weren't a lot of rich people around. A lot of soldiers who fought in the war fought for a reason.
So by the weekend after, the Sunday after, it would be just an empty
field.
again.
Yeah, it would have been cleared.
Almost as if nothing
Yeah,
happened.
maybe a few broken weapons. Cannons were weapons were very scarce, so anything that could be mended would be mended. There's references in the accounts of Plymouth saying gunsmiths are paid to repair weapons, broken weapons. So flags would have been flying. Any flags found on the site. Horse harness would have been taken. Horses would be stripped. Their hooves for glue, their horseshoes, anything useful would be taken off a battlefield. Scavengers.
What would be the atmosphere in Plymouth?
Rejoicing. Church bells rang. After the Sabbath day fight, they rang the church bells. And they celebrated every year on December the 3rd, or the closest Sunday to it.
That would have been the bells of St Andrews.
St Andrews, because Charles Church wasn't ready. It was still being constructed, but St Andrews would have rang their church bells. There would have been church service. Plymouth was a Puritan town, so there would have been prayers. Colonel William Gould was very puritanical in his ways, and he would have made the officers attend church services to give thanks to God for delivering us from the enemy. It was a great victory for Plymouth.
And for the country as a whole.
Well, for Parliament's cause, yeah, not for the King, because Plymouth held out.
Absolutely.
It wasn't the end of the siege. They were fighting on December the 18th around Mutley Plain, Magdalen Fort. The Royalists tried again and again, but they couldn't get in. There was more vicious fighting to come. But this is the one they remember. The Sabbath day fight was the significant, and it might have been to do with the Sabbath day being a Sunday, because people didn't like to fight on a Sunday.
How big an area was the actual fighting over here, do you think?
Well, you'd have to line up 1,000 men from this area down to that way, maybe 1 or 2 lines. It sort of went across. Difficult to say, really, Steve.
Football field?
Football field, yeah, because it wasn't a big area. In fact, 2,000 men fighting is. If you put 2,000 men in a football stadium of 45,000, you see how many there is actually there. Nothing. It's quite small as battles go.
Would anyone from Plymouth have come up to watch it?
Yes, people watch battles. They like to watch. They want to see what's going on. The Battle of Bull Run in American Civil War is a popular one where the people from Washington came out in picnic mood, and they had picnic baskets. They came, ladies and men, and when the Union Army was routed, they panicked and they all fled. There was soldiers, women, children, and carriages all going towards Washington. But it wouldn't be like that here. Like I say, most of the women didn't come up till after. People were watching from Lipson Fort. Mayor Coles might have been here. Philip Francis was fighting here, the old mayor of Plymouth. There was a lot of famous people. Michael Searle was a major, recently promoted. His unit fought here. He fought at Freedom Fields, and he was promoted again before the end of the month to Lieutenant Colonel, and he rewarded his soldiers in his company with a bonus for their part in the action. So it had a significant impact on Plymouth, the Sabbath day fight, and the people of Plymouth.
I wonder if the sun shone on that Monday like it does today.
It shone on Plymouth.
It certainly did.
They had the defenders,
It
yes.
certainly did.
And we celebrate that every December, which we should be celebrating more often, I
I
think.
just wonder how many of the people who live in this street and this area have got a clue about just what happened here.
I think some know. I think some people, because Colonel William Gould, who had 2 horses shot from under him that day, he must have been badly bruised, because if you fall off a horse, it shakes you up. His name is remembered in this street, Mount Gould Road, Colonel William Gould, which is good to remember people who fought here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like I say, the monument further up, that'll have names like Mayor Coles, James Wardlaw and Prince Maurice, but they did not take an active part in the fighting. What Colonel William Gould, and all those other names. I found quite a few names, about 40 names of people who fought here. And some were captured, some were badly wounded, some died. So these names are still in existence today because of the research I did.
Phil, what can I say, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.